Good evening, everyone. This is Peter from calling in from the Graham Visitors Center. Tracy, are you online and ready to start the beginner's lesson?
I am. I'm going to go ahead and stay off camera and just present, and then I'll get back on camera. I'm in a little bit of a dead zone. So
perfect. Well then, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Tracy is going to do our beginner's lesson. Thank you so much, Tracy.
all right, everybody, let me share my slides. All right, Peter, can you see that?
I can.
All right. Awesome.
Yes.
We'll keep moving. Thanks, Kathy. All right. Well, first, let's take a poll. Raise your hand if you still know that your bees are alive. If you're online, go ahead and raise it. Peter, take a count in the room for us. At least some of us, right? All right, so, but wait, what if I'm only a first year? We'll get to the folks that have bees that are still alive in a second here. But so for those of you that are online that haven't bought your bee equipment yet, haven't got your bees yet, this month is the time to make that happen. So here's what to get for a standard colony. You need, and those starter kits that you get and like the hardware stores and stuff usually don't have all of the right equipment that you need for beekeeping in the Northwest. So as soon as I load all this, you guys are welcome to take screenshots here, but starting at the top, telescoping covers I think work best up here because they keep the rain out a lot better than the migratory covers do. You'll need an inner cover. I prefer one with an entrance, although that's optional. You'll need 2 to 3 honey supers. Most people use medium boxes for those. And then the queen excluder is optional. In fact, if this is your first or second year, I'd recommend just skipping the queen excluder. It makes things a lot more complicated on space. We'll talk about that more in May and June. And then you need 2 deeps or 3 mediums for your hive body for the queen to lay in. So 2 deeps are equivalent to 3 mediums, and then you need the corresponding frames that go in those as well. When you get your frames, depending on whether you're using 8 frame boxes or 10 frame boxes, count accordingly, and you want to fill all of the space. If you don't fill all the space, the bees will do that for you, and you'll be eternally sorry this summer that you didn't have enough frames in there. So make sure you get enough frames, and that the foundation you get, if you're going to use frames with foundation, and most people do, buy waxed plastic. And you can either get regular waxed plastic or you can get extra heavy duty wax on your plastic now. That makes it a little bit easier for the bees to draw it out. But if you don't get waxed foundation, the bees really don't like putting wax on just plain old plastic, and they make a mess and make crazy comb everywhere, and you'll hate yourself for cheaping out on the frame. So make sure you get good waxed foundation. And then a screened bottom board or a solid bottom board, it's really up to you. You will also need some sort of a feeder, not those mason jars tipped over upside down in the front. Those don't last very long and are really good at feeding the ants and all your neighbors' bees too. So you want some sort of an internal feeder. I personally prefer the top feeders, but frame feeders work just as well. And then for later in the summer, we'll talk more about robbing screens. But if you're buying all your stuff, pick up a robbing screen too. And then once you get all your stuff, you want to paint the outside with exterior latex paint. Make sure it airs out really well and gets nice and dry before you put your bees in it. And if you want to get cheap exterior latex paint, hit the paint department at Lowe's or Home Depot and get the kind that somebody else got the wrong color on. And so long as you can live with the color, the bees don't care, and you'll get paint for a lot less expensive than mixing the colors. And here's my plug for buying your bees early. If you didn't buy them last month, now's the time to do it. They do run out starting in March or April. It's really hard to find bees, and supply and demand takes effect, and sometimes you end up paying a little bit more for a nuke. later on in the spring than you would now. So decide whether you want a package of bees. It's a little bit less expensive, but if you're starting from scratch, my humble recommendation is to buy yourself a 5-frame nuke, either a 5-frame deep nuke or an 8-frame medium. Some local beekeepers have 8-frame mediums that you can purchase. It's about the same money as a 5-frame deep. And it gets you a lot better and quicker start to your beekeeping year, especially if the spring is cold and rainy like it was last year. The bees can't really get out to forage very much right away if you buy a package. So nukes are the better bet, in my humble opinion. They are local pickup though. Some folks like Man Lake will sell nukes. I haven't heard a lot of positive things from people that purchase those via mail order. They end up dead a lot of times. So if you can, pick yourself up a local nuke. All right. And then so we'll have questions at the end, but if your bees are alive still, congratulate yourselves. Take time to pat yourself on the back and be happy. Now, this is a really critical time of year that the bees start to starve. So you want to make sure that you're feeding. We never know what we're going to get in February. It could be warm and rainy like now, or snowy, and we can still get some snow. You just never know. Those are my colonies in my side yard and my backyard, 2 different Februaries. It's a crapshoot. That all those bees were out last February, although I noticed my bees were out drinking water today and yesterday off the front porch and off my car and pooping all over it too. So they are getting out in between the rain. So if you wonder if your bees are alive and you're a techie, there's a couple ways you can check inside without even opening it. You can get a heat sensitive camera that connects right on the bottom of your smartphone, and you can tell where the heat signatures are. Notice in this one, the red is hotter, and so all the bees are up at the top. Now, since those bees are all up at the top, it means they've run out of food. So if your bees look like that and they're all clustered around the lid, then you definitely need to be feeding them to get them through the rest of the year. The other really cool things that are available in auto parts stores is you can get one of those little cameras that they use to look down into auto parts in your engine, and that too connects via Bluetooth to your phone, and you can just stick that right up through the bottom of your colony and or down through the top, and you can see your bees inside without really even opening it up. It's kind of fun. And here's my plug for not letting them starve. Right now, they're not out collecting pollen yet, but they will be soon. Probably next month as the maples start to bloom. And if we're lucky, we'll have some early dandelions. These girls are bringing back dandelion pollen last year. Don't let them starve, and don't think, oh, well, I don't want to get in there this time of year because I don't want them to get cold. Cold bees are way better than dead bees, and starved bees end up dead. So right now is a time to start thinking about adding some pollen patties, not winter patties, but summer patties. I haven't done it yet, but I'm about to. But once you start adding pollen patties, they do go through a lot more food because they're brooding up. And so you need to check and keep a regular schedule and look at the calendar and see, all right, when is it going to be around 50 degrees and when can I sneak a peek in the top and just make sure they still have food in there. Dry sugar definitely should be added right now if your bees are up at the top. Dry sugar, they can get out and get water and hydrate it. And you just don't want to use brown sugar or more expensive sugars. Cane or beet sugar doesn't matter so long as it's just the plain white sugar. And then optional supplements as you start making syrup, but not yet because it's way too cold out yet. Some people add a few drops of vinegar, white vinegar, lemon juice, or essential oils to their dry sugar and just make it a little bit like a, damp, not a slurry, but just damp, and then add a couple extra vitamins for them. So here's what my early spring inspections look like. I use these moisture quilts with just rabbit shavings in the top. And then I do a quick peek inside. I just tip the moisture quilt up. You notice in this picture, there's a big cluster of bees, not a huge cluster, but not bad size for this time of year. Cluster of bees right there, and they've clustered right in the middle. So literally all I did was push those pollen patties over closer to the bees. And if you have extra honey from a dead out or something, you can always pull the outside frame just away from the bees and pop a frame of honey in there for them too, if it's a little bit warmer. And then finally, it's still time to read. Ignore the dates. I forgot to change the dates on this online. Dawn has an online class and I have an in-person class, but again, these dates are wrong. So if you want to take a beginning beekeeping class, check out our website, and there's still room in each of Dawn's and my classes in order to take those. Those spaces do fill up fast. So I anticipate that after the meeting today, probably the class will fill up by the end of the week. So if you're interested in taking a in-person or an online beginner beekeeping class, Dawn and I are both master beekeepers, and we've gotten some pretty good feedback from people about what they learned. All right, so with that, I'll stop sharing, turn my camera on, and see if anybody has any questions. Kathy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that this year, bee losses across the country have been extraordinary. I've got a column on the front page of the website, and I talk about it in there. 50 to 70% of all commercial bees have been lost. And there's all sorts of guesses as to why. Nobody's got a correct answer yet. My own personal feeling is climate change. And what that means to you as hobby beekeepers is that those bees that are in the almonds will normally be broken down into nukes and packages, which are sold to you. Now, if those beekeepers don't have bees, there's going to be less packages and nukes coming up here to us. So, you know, get on it as soon as possible, see who's got them and get them ordered. And my vote is always for a local nuke. The queen's been overwintered, or the colony's been overwintered. You know, in Washington, used to our weather, and they tend to survive a little bit better. And don't worry if your bees die, because it takes about 3 years before you get really good at this. So keep it up.
Okay, if you're online, go ahead and raise your hand. If you don't know how to do that, you just hover your cursor around on the bottom and you see you can click on reactions and raise your hand. Or Peter, is there any questions in the room? Wow, we're a lively group tonight. All right, Locke, go ahead.
Sorry, Tracy, it takes me a long time to walk back here.
That's all right.
I was
Locke has
actually,
his hand raised up, and then we'll get your question, Peter. Locke going once, going twice. Okay, Peter, you're up.
I was just saying that I had just asked the room if they had any questions when you asked me if the room had any questions. We do not. As you said, it's a very quiet night. It's like everyone's tired or something.
Kim actually has a question.
Go ahead.
She said she can't figure out how to raise her hand. There she is.
Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand on my phone. My question is, I noticed in your pictures they're not insulated, your hives.
That's right. I don't insulate mine. I have well, I do and I don't. So I have a rigid insulation on the inside of my telescoping covers and the wood chips. And that's all I use for insulation in the Northwest.
Thank you.
If you add a lot of insulation around the sides here, they tend to get damp. So it's the damp that kills the bees over the winter here, more so than cold. And I'll just expand on that. I leave the rigid insulation inside my inside my telescoping covers year round.
We do have a question from the room now, Tracy.
Yay.
On insulation, when it gets down to 20 or 23 degrees, that's a little colder than our normal northwest winters. So would it be a good idea to slap some insulation around for the period of time when we have that heat cold, when it's far off on it? Like for a couple weeks or 2 weeks, and then take it off.
Were you able to?
I don't do that. I mean, most of the heat loss goes out through the top. So I've got a really thick piece of insulation on the top, but I don't have extra insulation. I've got like 50 colonies. So there would be a lot of extra insulation laying around in my bee yard that I would put on and take off. And I just haven't found a need to do that. And I've got pretty good survival rate each winter.
I figured out how to go off mute. Can I ask my question this time?
Yes, you may.
Sorry. Timing wise, when would you think about pulling your quilt box off and rotating the bottom brood box and the upper brood box?
That's a good question. So I usually wait until late April to do that. Or even May, it really depends. You can actually set your bees back by rotating the boxes too early. Because if you think about it, a lot of times we have a really cold, wet spring and all that heat is in the top. And at night, the bees contract and cluster tighter. And so if they've got a lot of brood around them and you move it down to the bottom where there's less heat, what'll happen is they'll cover it during the day, then they'll contract and all that brood on the bottom ends up dead. So I really wait until like May now to switch, because they do a lot better if I go ahead and let them start working down before I actually reverse the boxes.
Okay, thanks. With the quilt box then as well, do you keep that on? I guess, do you keep it on until you put on like a top feeder?
Yeah, I mean, there's no rush to take that off. And I honestly usually wait till I've been out my bee yard a lot and it gets super muddy and I get sick of walking in the mud. And that's when I take it's super scientific, I know. And then I take the quilt boxes off and dump the shavings around so I don't get my shoes all muddy anymore. That's, like May timeframe too.
Got it.
Kathy.
You've got a question in the room from George, and he'd like to know how your survival rate was for your 50 hive.
So I keep most of my bees in Palmer nukes. So like townhouses in a regular box. There's 2 colonies side by side. And so far I'm still at 70%. And 2 of them that died starved and it was my fault. Which is the saddest of all. You get in there and you're like, well, shoot.
I'll ask another one.
Sure.
I have a bottom entrance and a top entrance right now for ventilation. One of the hives just really loves the upper entrance. The other one only goes in and out of the bottom entrance. And over the course of last year, I found it was a real pain to work on the one that liked the upper entrance, because they all are piling up when I'm going through the boxes up top. I tended to get stung more from that hive, I think, because than the other one. Is it a problem at all to just remove, like once we kind of get out of the wet cold, to just remove that upper entrance? Or is it best to leave it in and just deal with it?
I have the same problem last year with one of my hives. My recommendation is wait till spring. Wait till we actually get warm, so like April. And then just propolis over, and then put a piece of duct tape over the propolis on that entrance to close it up. And that will, after about 2 or 3 weeks, that will convince the bees that the lower entrance is the right one.
Okay.
The only challenge with not having an upper entrance during the summer is you end up, I believe, with less honey. Because if you think about it, if the bees all have to fly down through the bottom and go through that congested brood space and say, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, to get up into the honey supers to give the nectar to the house bees, then it takes longer for them to make that traverse. And therefore, you get fewer trips to the nectar source from each bee each day. So I really use upper entrances quite a bit in my colonies when the honey supers are on, because then they just go zooming right in. Sometimes they just go zoom right up to the entrance. The house bees grab the nectar right there, and the forager never even goes inside, and then out they go again.
See, last year I had the opposite experience because I had the queen excluders on, which kept the drones out of the honey. And as a result, they were much more productive in their brood box because basically they were eating as it was coming in.
That's why there's a million ways to keep bees.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you both. That was helpful.
Sure. Allison.
Hey there. So I picked up some frames from someone who tried to keep bees and gave it up, and they were racked with wax moth. I was wondering if, so I've tried cleaning them out pretty well, and then we had that really cold snap. Do I still need to put them in the freezer for an extended period of time, or will the cold snap do the trick?
Yeah, if they've been outside, you're probably fine. The only trick with frames that the wax moths have really gotten to is they'll eat the wax right down to the plastic foundation. So if they're plastic foundation, you might want to consider getting some wax and a little short roller and melt your wax outside, and then put that roller in the bottom and then roll wax over the top of that foundation again, so that the bees will build wax on top. Otherwise, they'll work around those areas where the wax moths ate it all off the plastic.
Makes sense. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
We have a question in the room.
Last year I decided to try a little shortcut, grating wax on by hand. Have you ever tried that versus melting and rolling and all that business, just kind of smearing it in?
Yep.
Not
That's why I
effective?
melt it now. I think
Oh,
you get more wax on if you melt it.
Cool.
You can certainly do it the other way. It's just a lot more elbow grease.
Yeah.
Another thing that might work, I haven't actually tried it, would be to put your oven on its lowest, basically do the smearing technique and then put your oven on the absolute lowest setting it'll go, and give them like 5 to 10 minutes in the oven.
I try not to do mine inside. But it, might work on your barbecue too.
Wax is
That would
very
be too hot.
flammable.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, okay, 180, 5 minutes max, and it's out.
Yeah.
It on a metal sheet.
Right. With the fire extinguisher nearby.
Yep.
All right, well, Peter, I'll turn it back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We do have, before we move on completely, we do have 3 of our vetted bee vendors here today. We have Dave Schiffelbein of totally blanking, Elite Honey and Bee, Quentin Gent, Seattle Bee Services, and myself, of course. if anyone has any specific, because we are running ahead of schedule to, move into the next part too fast. Does anyone have any questions about bee purchasing, sales, the process of collecting bees from California, or anything else? Because we've got experienced people who know all of that stuff, and I can throw it around the room. We do have one question on that subject from the room, it looks like.
Yeah, I ordered these already in this quality out around the country. It's actually impact the delivery of the order and they don't even know we have enough
Dave, do you want to take that? I can take it.
I can tell you what I know and you can talk about what you know.
Yep, and Quentin, if you want to add anything, feel free.
Peter, could you repeat the question? We couldn't hear it online.
Sorry. So the question was, is there, for people who have already ordered bees, do the suppliers who are here in the room expect to have any trouble fulfilling those orders? Yes?
Right now, the answer to that is no. My supplier warned me about this shortage of bees even before it hit the national press. And he tells me his bees are strong and that he thinks he'll supply in the numbers that he always has.
Yes, I am not anticipating at this point any significant issues. That said, I did speak to one large supplier in California who was nervous, not saying that he wasn't going to be able, not my supplier, not that he wasn't going to be able necessarily to fulfill, but that he often buys bulk bees from the people pollinating the almonds, and the people pollinating so that's what they would shake into the packages. So the people pollinating the almonds, all those commercial beekeepers, because they are low on bees, aren't really wanting to sell bulk bees to him. So he's a little nervous about that and how that's going to develop over time. That was a while back that I talked to him about that. I know that I talked to one person whose hives are down in the almonds, and I just heard from Russell Highcomb, who's Dave's supplier today, that my hives down there are doing absolutely awesome. So I assume that means that everyone else's hives who are down there actively pollinating are also doing awesome. So they're producing lots and lots and lots of bees. So that's good news. Quentin, anything to add?
Well, same for me. I'm very confident by my supplier, which is my family. We know all the family supply, but it's usually fine. I want to add, like, yes, there's a lot of mortality, and we hear a lot of big numbers. Also, what is the actual reality of survival? A lot of beekeepers love to commercial beekeepers love to lower their numbers at the beginning of the season. I think it's part of my experience. What happened is that where the drama also is that a lot of the bees that die are actually not in California. It's guys that get very bummed out because a lot of their bees die in other regions of the US, and it's not worth it for them to then come in California. And that's why there's a shortage of bees in California. But the three of us get bees from beekeepers that are sedentary to California. So their bees are already there and they don't have as much losses for that. And so that does not impact us nearly as much as those guys. And usually the guys that come to California, they bring singles or doubles, and then they want to leave with more hives, but less doubles. That's why they sell those bees in bulk, because they want to reduce, because you can double the amount of hives of colonies if you cut them before you move them out. So that's why they sell them in bigger. But yeah, overall it seems okay.
Thank you all. I see Regina has her hand up.
I was just wondering if any of the vendors had Saskatraz bees, or what was the thought on Saskatraz bees?
I do not have, I am working with Oliveras Honeybees, who is the supplier for Saskatraz. I am not currently intending to, I don't think I will have Saskatraz, no. Dave, do you want to add anything to that question?
Well, there is only one supplier, as you said, that can supply Saskatraz in the United States. And that's Oliveira's honeybees, and he sells primarily through Man Lake. So I'm not gonna have.
Yeah, they are, Oliveris is branching out and doing more of its own stuff rather than just depending on Man Lake for various reasons. But yes, they are Man Lake's, Man Lake is definitely their biggest customer. Yep.
Do they have a good reputation per se? I mean, I hear
the
they're
bee- Sorry, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Regina. You're asking if the bee itself has a good reputation, the Saskatraz bee?
yeah, do many people have success with them?
I will throw that out to the room. Someone here, though, did ask what a Saskatraz bee is. It's a hybrid that was developed up in Saskatchewan and is raised, so it's a Canadian hybrid bee that, because they can't really do queen rearing up there, they bring it down, or they have contracted with Oliveira's honeybees to produce the Saskatraz bee commercially. I believe that's correct. Does anyone have any comments about their experiences with the Saskatraz bee, either online or in the room?
All mine died.
And I've been running Saskatraz as a variety, with a bunch of other hives. I'm also around 50 hives, and I've run them in the past and I've had good luck with them. They build up like the Carniolans and they're a little less inclined to swarm. But that being said, if you're within your first 3 years, I wouldn't worry as much about the race of bee. Carniolans do fantastic in the Northwest. The number one thing you need to do is learn how to treat your mites. You need to learn how to feed at the right time. And then you need to learn to make sure that they get through the winter with supplemental feed if needed. And then once you've got some bees overwintering and you've focused on those primary skills, then you can kind of branch out and try some different races, and you'll have some things to compare with instead of having them die every year.
I've had a lot of luck overwintering. I've been beekeeping for a while, so I was just more curious about them and wanted to see what people's experience with them were before, shelling out a lot of money for a nuke or maybe just getting a queen.
Yeah,
You were muted.
I've had
Sorry.
Saskatraz.
Dave, you were muted. I just unmuted you.
I can comment on my personal experience with Saskatraz. I ordered 5 queens a couple of years ago from Man Lake, and same as Tracy, all of them died. But what I attribute that to more was not the race of the bee, but the shipping of Man Lake. I don't feel like they've got their shipping down very well. So the some of the queens arrived dead, all the attendants were dead. It just wasn't a good experience at all.
Great. It is now 7 o'clock, so I think we are going to go ahead and move on unless anyone has any emergencies. Give me 1 second to load up the February announcements. I will share my screen. What? What do you mean you can't open the type of file? Great, you were lying to me. All good. Awesome. Okay, thank you all so much for being here. Welcome to the primary portion of the February meeting of the Puget Sound Beekeepers Association. If you are in the room, we do have snacks, tea, etc. back behind us. Feel free to help yourself and enjoy. If you are online, I trust that you can find your own snacks. PSBA was founded in 1948, exists to promote common interest in general welfare of beekeeping, to protect honeybees, educate beekeepers, encourage good bee management practices, and to encourage good relations between beekeepers and the public. And we care very, very, very greatly about that. And thank you so much for participating with us in this. I do want to quickly introduce our 2025 officers to you. I am the president, Peter Nolte. Magali, I don't know if she's online, but she would be online if she's here, as well as she is our vice president, Dawn Beck, who is definitely online as our president ex officio. Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you. Our treasurer, Bruce Becker, is here in person. Raise your hand, Bruce. Thank you so much. And Colleen Duville is here as well in person. Right behind me, she raised her hand. Thank you all so much. Just a quick note for everyone. Note before that. If you are a trustee, if you would stand, if you're in the room, wave your hand, whatever. If you're online, just do something to acknowledge yourself. Thank you all, trustees. We did just in this last month have one trustee who had just started their second year. It's a 2-year term. Let me know that they are not going to be able to fulfill that term due to life changes. So we are looking for one more trustee for the board. This is super important. You do not have to be an expert beekeeper by any stretch of the imagination. The board has nothing to do with beekeeping whatsoever. The only thing you have to do is care about helping to lead PSBA. So if you have any interest in that, we would love to talk to you. You can email president@pugetsoundbees.org, and I will get that and pass it around, and we'd love to talk with you. We had a big conversation at the last board meeting, which was just a week ago, about all of the volunteer opportunities coming up at PSBA. If you feel like scanning that QR code, it'll take you to the webpage where you can access all of the important stuff that's coming up. We will need, this year, we'll need people helping out in the apiary. We'll need people helping to sell honey and talk about bees at our different events, some of which are coming up not super fast, but not too far in the future. And then, of course, we also have our community outreach in schools and stuff like that. If you're interested in any of those things, we would love it if you would contact us, and we will get you on the list with the appropriate program leader. Speaking of programs, the Neighborhood Captains. This is a program that we're working on updating at the moment, but this is PSBA's mentorship program. If you're a new beekeeper and you want to learn, you want to talk to people who are in your area, the Neighborhood Captains are the people in your area that have said, yes, I want to talk to new beekeepers and experienced beekeepers and pass on, whatever my level of knowledge might be. If you've got an emergency that happens and you just need someone to talk you through it, these are the people to talk to. That QR code or link will lead you to the right page on our website. You should have received an email on Sunday or Monday with the PSBA swarm list signups. If you would like to be on the swarm list, you can either click on the link in that email. The earlier emails, the monthly emails, had a broken link. So sorry about that. But you should have gotten the new link in an email just a couple days ago. You can click on that link or follow this QR code or the URL there. And that'll just take you to a form to fill out to be on the Puget Sound Beekeepers Association swarm list. This is for people who want to go out, collect swarms from trees, buildings, bushes, picnic tables, rhododendrons, sides of telephone poles, trying to think of all the different places I've, found swarms in the past. It's a lot of fun. We do want people who are catching swarms on behalf of PSBA to know what they're doing, to have caught at least one swarm before, let's say. And you do have to attest to that in the form. So if you're a brand new beekeeper, catching a swarm via the PSBA swarm list is not for you, but we would absolutely love it if you contact someone on the swarm list and say that you would love to go out with them on a swarm catch sometime so that you can know how to catch swarms and be on the swarm list for next year. We are definitely looking for more people for the swarm list this year. It was
Peter,
a little
can I
tight.
jump in?
Yeah,
I-
absolutely.
We don't have your PowerPoint in presentation mode and it's not advancing online. I don't know if it's meant to be.
It should be. It's doing it on here.
Aha.
Um, is that any better?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for warning me about that, Magali, and sorry. There's the swarm list. I'll leave it there for a second for anyone who wants to grab the QR code or the URL. It's not working as well here, but Brian, do you know what my setting is that's wrong? Well, we'll leave it for the moment. We'll just want to make sure that it's fixed for when Tom's presentation starts. I feel like we can see this well enough.
Can you
Okay.
make sure that you go back through the QR codes at some point whenever is the right
Yep.
time, just for the people online?
I can go backwards really fast. Neighborhood captains, URL, and the QR code for anyone who wants to take a look at that page. I know the subtitles are in the way. Here's the QR code for the volunteer page on the PSBA website. I should add that we are in the process of building a completely new website for the Puget Sound Beekeepers Association. We got a very, very, very fast demo of that at the last board meeting, and I'm really excited about getting it finished and showing it off to everyone. Swarm list. Last QR code of the night. Apiary registration is very, very, very important to all of us. As a beekeeper in Washington State, you are required to register as a beekeeper. This QR code will send you to the right location to do that registration process. It's only about $5. It's only $5 if you have, I think it's 5 hives or less. If you have more than that, it's not that much more. And the fees do go to bee research in Washington State via Washington State University and the Bee Lab there. Also important, we get an additional benefit as beekeepers in Washington State that the legislature was kind enough to pass a liability protection for us, that just as long as you are registered as a beekeeper with the state and following all municipal laws, you are protected up to gross negligence, I believe is the wording of the law. So no being grossly negligent, but anything less than that, we have liability protection as long as you're registered and following the law. I think Tracy and Kathy, maybe both, Kathy definitely alluded to this during the presentation or during the beginner's presentation. There has been significant colony losses over in the last, since this is June through February 12th, I believe, is this data. There's going to be a presentation by Project APIS M this Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. If you are interested in hearing the early results of both the surveys and research, you just need to follow this link or follow the QR code and register. They will send you a link 15 minutes before for the YouTube video. There was also a Zoom video, but I believe that one is completely full at this point. So this is your opportunity to hear it firsthand from the researchers, if that is something that you would like to see. But yeah, hobbyist last June through February, 50% mortality, 54% for sideliners, and 62% mortality for commercials of the people who responded, of course. That is the end of the announcements for today. Please take, let's say 5 minutes. If you're online, feel free to chat around with each other. If you're in the room, I'm going to mute us while we get Tom Lee's presentation set up, and then we will start with the main presentation of the evening. Thank you all so much. Talk to you very soon.
Hi, everyone. How you doing?
Hi, Mugly.
Hello.
Hi, Mowgli. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the 60-degree day tomorrow. I'm planning on getting into the hive and getting them some new frames, some honey frames.
Oh, yay.
Nice. Looks like it's warm then.
I don't get to get into mine till Friday. I'm busy next couple days.
But like Tracy said, cold bees are better than dead bees. So this is a good time to go in and make sure that you have brood, that they're starting to brood up and that they have a decent sized cluster. I would hope to see them covering what, maybe 3 frames at least. And if not, then you might want to consider if you think they might not survive, then now is the time to order bees because there may very well be a shortage this spring.
Yeah, that was my worry until I saw both hives going full out on poop
That's
flight.
good.
So I'm like, okay, great. Hopefully the queen will be doing good as well. We'll see tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mine are already making drones, and I'm concerned.
Oh my gosh,
That
you
happened to
gotta
me last
get on
year.
top of your swarm control.
Where are you at, Connor?
West Seattle.
West Seattle. Okay. A
Yeah.
little warm over there by the water.
Yeah,
Yep.
I had an Italian that was doing that last year, and literally the first warm day that I could actually get into the hives, they swarmed on me.
That's Italians for you.
I've already given them a third empty deep, hoping that fully drawn comb, hoping that the extra space they'll hang out for a little bit longer. But yeah, swarm control, my first winter. Woo!
Well, and read up on something called a Demaree split. That's a way this early in the year, unless you buy a queen, it's pretty hard to get a queen mated if they do swarm on you. And so, but you can do a Demaree split, which basically takes all the brood away from the queen, and the nurse bees still take care of the brood, but without all that pheromone and without being able to take the queen with them, then they don't swarm. So you can actually forestall swarming by a month doing that method.
I will try to find capacity and time to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always the struggle. As I heard somebody else saying, don't have life opportunity until Friday to get in. So
Friday's
yep.
plenty of time. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the challenge is looking at the I think it's the 6-week forecast on one of the weather apps. Is it shows our standard. We're going to have warm above 50 degrees and during the day and above 40 at night for the next couple of weeks. And then of course we get to that second week in March and it's going to drop again, which is what it kind of does every year. So if you do something like a Demaree split, be careful that there's not a lot of cold weather coming because the brood on the far side of the split can get chilled. You're probably okay not having them swarm until you get to the end of March or April.
Would throwing insulation around it be advised at that point as a safety precaution?
To prevent swarming or
Yeah, because you're saying like with the brood getting cold there in March, as you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I'd wait until April to do a Demaree split. Otherwise they might get chilled. They're not gonna swarm on you in March. Most likely. I've actually never heard of a swarm in March, although there were some, I think last year, that were swarming in April.
Yeah, like mine was like the last week of March, I think, was when they took off.
Right, that's early.
I have heard of March swarms in the city. If you're in the
Have
city.
you?
Yeah, it was in an insulated hive, so that was half the problem. They got themselves an early start.
I've gotten a couple the last week in March or the first week in April.
You can always buy a queen and do an early split, and they'll have so much time to build up. You'll have 2 really strong hives for honey flow. How's everyone else's bees doing? It is a quiet group today.
Who's a first year actually? Maybe a bunch of us don't have bees.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that could be, yeah. Are you gonna get bees again, Magali?
I am. I've ordered them, and then I told Kathy if she's got some extras, I'd actually love to try one of her genetics and see how they do in Montana. And if they
Yeah.
happen to be cold hardy, it'd be kind of cool. Otherwise, I ordered Saskatraz this year because I have a very unique bee yard where I'm the only beekeeper around. So I'd love to do genetic selection. And so I want to start with hygienic bees to begin with.
Yeah.
And then I have on my list to reach out to, we have one bee scientist at the university who's working on their immune system. And so I'm hoping I can just chat with her and kind of figure out if I can actually help or contribute in any way to her research.
Oh yeah, how cool is that?
Where are you at in Montana?
I'm at the entrance to Yellowstone Park in West Yellowstone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you end up with bear questions or what happens when it gets to 40 below, I can give you that aspect of beekeeping.
I grew up in Montana, but I didn't have bees then.
I think they're pretty great in Montana. It's so dry, as
Yeah.
you know, right? It's so much drier. They
Yeah.
actually do really well with 40 below.
Yeah, they
What they
do.
don't like is the wet.
The snow insulates the hives. I'm thinking it would be a lot easier to beekeep there. But yeah, bears, I could see bears being big problem.
Yeah, I have a full-on bee shed with like 10,000 volts around it. There's a nonprofit that addresses most of the Northwest, that if you're in a place that actually is considered high risk for bears, they'll actually help reimburse your electric fence if anyone has that. And yeah, I mean, bears.
Good evening, everyone. Wait.
Do good, Peter.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much. And we're ready to go ahead and get started with our main meeting. As long as people online are, I know I kind of just cut you off. I had you on mute accidentally, so I wasn't really listening. You're good enough? Okay. And I think I'm not really there. Okay, this is better. Now you can see my head. Great. Thank you all so much for being here, both in person and online. So thrilled. Our speaker tonight is Tom Lee, who I heard give a version of this presentation, I think more than a decade ago. So enjoyed it, so educational, learned so much about planting for bees and and just what the bees can find in our area throughout the year. So super looking forward to hearing it, whatever's changed in the last 10 years. Tom, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and launch that presentation. And I think I figured out what the problem was last time. So hopefully this will work for everyone the way that it's supposed to. Sharing the screen. Okay. People online, does it look correct to you?
Yes.
Yes, great, awesome. Tom?
Okay, my name's Tom Lee, and I know some of you, and as Peter said, I gave a presentation quite a while ago, and then time went by, and pandemics went by, and Peter and I met in a bar, and then here we are. I hope you can see everything here. And as you can see, I'm a lover of plants and bees. And I actually am a self-identified hortisexual. I love plants, maybe too much, right? And I also teach at Everett Community College, where I'm actually in the art program. And but I also guest lecture in global ethnobotany and sustainable nutrition, and have also been part of the vocal music program up there. And so why don't we get started? Now I'd like to start, go ahead, here. Next slide, please.
Tried, 1 second.
Is that maybe? Yeah, well, yeah, okay, yeah, can you go back? Yeah.
I just got it to go forward.
Yeah, one of my things is being like an Asian American, I can't grow facial hair. And so I had to see what that's like. And so I did the bearded bees. How many people have done the bearded bees? No, yeah, fun, yeah, it's great. Actually, it's a very meditative experience. Now, some I don't want to call these ground rules, but some general things about my speaking is feel free to chime in with a question at any time. I'm going to be looking in both directions, so you don't need to raise your hand, just chime in. And I'm told by many students that when I get excited about things, I have a tendency of talking too fast. And please let me know if that's the case, but I can't promise that it'll help at all. Okay, yeah, okay, so let's go on. Now, so this is my yard, and this is part of the backyard. And I've been there for 26 years and doing a lot of gardening, both vegetable and I don't like to call it ornamental gardening, but maybe apiary gardening. And I've been keeping bees there for 26 years there now. And it's right in Shoreline. And a lot of the images that you're going to be seeing today actually are going to be coming from my yard. Now, this is my vegetable garden in the back, and on the right side is my salad garden. And there's a bowl there, and we're going to be talking about that later. And my actual major discipline is ceramics, and so I just love making big bowls like this, or big platters. The Western style of eating is so weird. Like this is mine, you can't have it. And so I like serving entire meals on a single, and you'll see that it's actually fun for the bees. Okay, now we actually live in an area of the world that goes through what I like to call cycles of abundance and scarcity. And there's certain times that we have plenty of resources, both as humans and as beekeepers, and other times that we don't. My best friend comes from Colombia, and his first year here, he had no idea about the concept of seasonal holidays because it's all the same year round. Of course, you have different things that are in bloom at different times, but we have both the privilege and the responsibility of this. So, now, as we know, and as they talked about in the first part of the presentation, a lot of us actually have had the experience or continue to have the experience of needing to supplement the feed through sugar water, which has its pluses and minuses, but why not let the bees do it themselves? And this is an old New Yorker cartoon, and when the bees see flowers, they say food. And when the flowers see bees, they say sex. And so we actually have a really, really nice co-evolutionary path that they've taken. There was a NOVA program years ago called The First Flower, and they went back through the fossil history and found it. And then at that time, the flying insects were tiny, 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 and they co-evolved and have just created these really, really, really wonderful relationships. Now, when did we start the year? Now, so in the Western calendar here, the Gregorian calendar, we say it starts at January 1st, which is kind of weird because it's not really tied to anything. So next. So we just actually started the year in the state, 2025. And a lot of people have asked me, when does that happen? When does that happen? And some people call it the Chinese New Year. I'm Korean, we don't call it that. And some people call it the Lunar New Year, which is not exactly what I would say is accurate. And there are many Lunar New Years, like Rosh Hashanah is in the fall and everything. We have so many Lunar New Years. So next, it's actually an agricultural New Year. And it's not lunar, but it's lunisolar, which means you have to count on the sun and the moon, and it's always the second new moon after the winter solstice. And so that's why it shifts around from, late January to early March, depending on the position of the moon and the sun. And, but this is when the ancient Chinese started planting, because that's when things started waking up, and there's another lunisolar holiday that a lot of people in America know about, which is
Easter, Western Easter, which is always the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. So you have to, think about all of these different calendars that you're following. And so next slide, please. Now we also have Groundhog Day, which just passed, and some people say that this is the, it is also an interesting holiday because it's exactly between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. That's the halfway point. And it's actually an interesting thing because, next slide, please. I've been tracking this, and since 1887, Phil, the major spokesperson of the groundhog world, has only been 38 to 40% correct. This is less than chance, right? So I think what we should do is we should pay attention to that and then do the opposite, right? And we'll be just as well off, if not just a little bit better. And so this is actually in the same time in the Celtic New Year as Bridget's Candlemas. And Bridget was the old Celtic goddess of agriculture. And then somehow she got turned into a saint, and somehow she got turned into a groundhog. But they would actually take the grain stalks from last year, make an effigy of her, and burn her on February 2nd for Candlemas. So the light and the heat from her body would bring back the spring. Good. Now, so I'm starting this kind of bi-monthly, January, February. And again, most of these are from my yard. But then toward the end of the year, there's so many things blooming concurrently that it'll just go by high summer, late summer, and so on. Now, this is Mammalus, or some people say Hamamillus virginiana, intermedia. And the reason why there's an X there is that it's actually a hybrid. It's a hybrid between the Chinese witch hazel and the Japanese witch hazel. And the word malus actually means covered with fine hairs. And if you look at the undersides of the leaves, it actually has the fine hairs. Now, I'm going to use both the common names and the botanical names, but something that drives me crazy is within the last 20, 30 years, there's been a huge reworking of botanical nomenclature. And so many things are being moved, and so many things are actually being renamed. It drives me crazy. Tell me to stop, right? And nowadays, bleeding hearts, we know bleeding hearts, right? Nowadays, bleeding hearts are actually classified as poppies. They gotta stop. But I'll try, since I'm old, I'll try to keep you updated, but I always default to the old ones. Now, notice this is happening in the sun. It's just a couple weeks ago. And they have these nice ribbon-like, a lot of times people say spider-like things. And on those rare days where it gets over 50 degrees in January, the bees love them. They absolutely love them. And this one is Diane. And there's several different cultivars, which are varieties brought into cultivation and asexually reproduced by humans. This is one of my favorites because it has very red petals, and also fragrance. Now, this is still kind of late winter, so if you're here during the day, go out to the winter garden. You will smell some of the most beautiful things in the world there. Next, please. Now, so this is so Diana is over on the right, and Helena, or some people say Jelena, is on the left. And you'll notice that they have just these really wonderful flowers on bare branches. Now, the American witch hazel is from the East Coast. It's Hamamillus, or Hamamillus, however you want to pronounce it, virginiana. And we can grow that here. In fact, the rootstock for these is oftentimes grown on that, but it blooms in fall when the leaves are just about ready to fall off. It's harder to see the flowers that way, but that's the plant where you get the cosmetic astringent witch hazel. Now, this is why a lot of people plant it. And usually the color of the fall leaves is similar to the color of the flowers. So Helena is actually going to be much more orange, whereas Diane is going to be much more red, but they're all beautiful. And it's really nice because in the summer, you have beautiful leaves anyway, nice, beautiful green, but in spring and fall, just glorious. Now, this is something very closely related to the witch hazel, and this is actually called Parodia persica, which is also called Persian ironwood, and it is glorious flower, glorious, glorious flower and glorious fall color. And these are blooming right now. And in warmer weather, the bees will actually come to them. Next, please. And this is fall color. Believe it or not, same tree, 2 falls. And this thing just creates the most spectacular fall display that you can imagine. And it's so strange because it's kind of a gamble. What are you going to get this year? What are you going to get this year? And I actually just finished this presentation yesterday. And I promised myself that I was going to give you a list of a plant list for this. And I can email them to Mr. President here, right? Yeah.
We can send it out.
Yeah, and so this, but one thing about this is Persian ironwood has a tendency of growing this way, but this cultivar is actually called Vanessa. And the nice thing about this cultivar, which is widely available at nurseries here, is that it has a much more upright habit. I might have the standard species in my backyard, and it is much longer than it is tall, but I still love it. And this is a weird plant, and I think that there's only 3 of them in the Seattle area. One of them is mine. This is called Psychopsis sinensis, which is very closely related. As you can see, the flowers here, you can't see because my photography with this. It has a very, very similar flower, but it actually has a leathery evergreen leaf. Wonderful. Okay, now this is a cultivar of or a native of our local Oregon grape, and this is where the botanists and the horticulturalists kind of right. We call them Mahonians, right? But the botanists have reclassified this as a berberis, barberry. It's not Mahonia, right? Because these always have yellow flowers, and they always have these what they call pinnately compound leaves that look a lot like holly, right? But you want to keep some hummingbirds around? Plant one of these. Now, this one is called Arthur menzies. It grows absolutely huge, and it blooms throughout the winter. And even though it's not a red tubular flower like the hummingbirds seem to like, they love this, and so do the bees. Now, of course, crocus. Now, this one is called blue pearl, and I'm going to be talking just a little bit about color. In just a minute, but this is the first crocus to bloom in my yard. It's also my favorite, and it's also favored among bees. Now, this is funny. I realize that you can't really see the bottom, but it's not really bottom. This is what we call additive color and light theory. Now, a lot of times when you ask someone, what are the primary colors, people are going to say red, blue, yellow, right? Those are the primary colors for mixing paint. We call that subtractive color theory. But if you have separate lights that you're projecting in one place, that's called additive color theory. And the colors are all very, very different. And it's red, blue, and green instead of red, blue, and yellow. And when you have these 2 lights, pairs of lights together, you'll notice that between the green and the blue, you get a color called cyan. And between the red and the blue, you get a color called magenta. It looks better there than it looks here. No, but the thing about this is bees are very, very sensitive to that high energy part of the spectrum, which includes blue, violet, and ultraviolet. And so a lot of times I'll say, yeah, bees love blue when I'm talking about fireweed, which is a really, really bright fuchsia color, but it has that blue wavelength in it. And a lot of times I tell people, if you want pollinators in your yard, plant blue, plant violet, plant cyan and magenta. Next, please. Okay, now this is a terrible picture, but these are Eats and Heathers, and they're Luna and Erica. And the funny thing is I have to learn a lot of names for my job. And one thing that I do is if you can make a visual out of something, you're going to remember it better. And I had a student named Joey Walla. And like, how many people remember this? So Walla is the Hindi suffix for a street vendor. And so I just imagined him on the streets of Mumbai selling baby kangaroos, right? Like Julian Walla, right. And like I had a student named Kurt Gum, right? So I put him in a pickup truck filled with mugs driving in reverse because Kurt Gum is mug truck backwards, of course. But I cannot tell the difference between people named Erica and named Heather. Because Erica is the genus for the heather family, right? And I had two students sitting next to each other, completely different looking, completely different style, and completely different ethnicities. One was named Erica, one was named Heather. I couldn't tell them apart. But I put this in the early part of the year because I'm seeing them in nurseries now. But you can actually have heaths and heathers for all throughout the year, and the bees absolutely love them. And so next time, please. And so this is actually a Scottish moor that has the Erica here, and they actually bottle the honey. Has anyone had Scottish heather honey? Yes. Yeah. It's fantastic. But it's also, and this is one of my favorite words in the world. Actually, my favorite word in the world is callipygian, and that actually means having shapely buttocks. But anyway, no, another one of my favorite words in the world is thixotropic. Is anyone familiar with thixotropic? Now, thixotropic, yes. Would you like to give us a?
I'm an environmental engineer, and the thixotropic is a characteristic of sewage sludge.
Oh, really? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Plastic when it's still, it starts moving and moves up.
Okay, very good. Thixotropic means it's solid or semi-solid when it's still, but when agitated, it's actually liquid. And so the thing that I usually think about is ketchup. You know, if ketchup has been sitting around, it's really hard to pour, but if you shake it up, then it's easier to pour. Or cement trucks. You know, as long as they keep moving, that stuff's going to pour, but as soon as it stops, it solidifies and you've got a mess, right? Now, this is a thixotropic honey. And in order for people to actually harvest the honey, they actually have to vibrate the frames before they extract it. Otherwise, it doesn't come out. And it has the consistency of jelly. And it has this, I don't know, how would you describe the flavor? Or the fragrance?
For me, it's more the consistency that is very weird.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very special.
Yeah, it's very, very special. But it also has almost this mentholy, almost this candy-like quality to it. And it's available. Now, these are hellebores, right? How many people grow hellebores? You got to grow hellebores. Now, the thing about them is that they're in the buttercup family, and they're out now. They started in February and moved through March. And I would actually like to talk about the structure a little bit. The outer things we call petals, but they're actually tepals. They're both sepals and petals. And the actual true petals, if you look at the one on the left, you'll notice that there is a dark series of little structures there. And they are modified petals, and they are called nectaries. And because they hold nectar. And the thing about them is, if you have one that's recently opened up, just go taste one of the nectaries, and you can tell that there's a spicy kind of honey there. Copious nectar, copious like pollen, and the pollen is very high quality. And in days when it comes, it really gets a little bit warmer. Your bees will absolutely love this. Now, I actually pulled a frame from my hives one March and then actually just tasted it. It's amazing honey. But the problem with that is at this time of year, you don't have enough flowers or enough bees to create a surplus. But you know, my idea with this talk and also with a lot of my planting is to extend the seasons to give the bees and flowers something to do, right? And also, it actually will help you build up your colonies in the spring. Okay, now here is my yard. You know, I had this plan when hellebores started becoming the hot thing, right? That this would be my retirement, so I made selections, but they just took over and my neighbor across the street was noticing that they're like $25 to $30 a piece in their in the nurseries, and they said, "Could we have, you know, some hellebores? How many do you need?" They said, 3 or 4, and I said, 4 dozen coming right out, right? Yeah. But one thing that I did not know about my neighbors, they're vanilla bean importers, and so I gave them a few of these plants, and they gave me a armload of vanilla beans, like $200. And so it's good to have neighbors. Be nice to your neighbors. Now, the one on the right is a New York cultivar, which actually doesn't have nectaries, but it has another layer of petals, and so it's a full double, and they're just stunning. And in February, March, and this is what you do with them. And they're just great to float around and super nice. Okay, Crocuses, we're back to the crocuses, and people actually say that the crocuses are the true harbingers of spring. I don't know if I agree, but they're certainly nice. And as you notice, the bees love these. Now, these are larger crocuses that are called the Dutch giants, but any of the crocuses are going to be great for you. Please. And let's talk about these. Now, these are reticulated irises. And there's an iris for everyone, and I absolutely love irises, but these are this big. They're like tiny little things, and they come up so early, and the bees love them. And so they have something called the standard and something called the fall, and right in between them is where the stamens are and the nectaries are, and these will fall right in. Now, does anyone know the term reticulated? What does that mean, reticulated? Or what sorts of things are reticulated?
Metrobus.
What's that?
The Metrobus.
Okay, sure. No, that's articulated. Reticulated. Reticulated python. Reticulated giraffe. Now, the word reticulated actually refers to a particular pattern, which means covered by a fine net. And I never knew why these things were called reticulated until here are the bulbs. They're covered by a fine net. And tiny little things, they naturalize beautifully, whereas, you know, your Dutch irises and your other ones, they kind of peter out after a while. These will actually form large colonies of these things early in the year. Okay, and this is the Lanthus. This is the snowdrop, and I love these. I absolutely love these. I actually went to, oh, this was strange, a meeting of like some local chapter of the Snowdrop Society and blah, blah, blah. Like whenever, okay, maybe this group too. Whenever you're actually in a group that's all focused on one thing, people get very specific. Like this one has 2 dots, right? No, but these are wonderful. They come up. I see bees on here, but they're so sparse that you don't really see a whole lot of activity. But I figure anything helps, especially if it's cute, right? Okay, now this is Mascari, which is grape hyacinth. Are you familiar with this plant? Because it's everywhere, right? And once you start growing it, you keep growing it, it just goes everywhere. Again, bees love blue. No, but I have a particular love of this plant because they look like Marge Simpson. I have a huge crush on plants that look like Marge Simpson, right? And so I call this Mascari Marge Simpson eye, right? And so, yeah, next. Okay, now these are anemones, and there's so many different kinds of anemones, and my favorite is this, which is called anemone blanda. And if you go to a garden store, they have these little, they're not quite bulbs, they're actually corms that you can get, and they look like little black pebbles, and you just plant them, and it could take 2 to 3 years before they start to flower, but they start to flower everywhere, and they keep increasing. And over on the right, you see one of our little Melissa's, right? Yeah, well, yeah, one of our honeybees there. And, you know, so these are part of the buttercup family, Ranunculaceae, and copious pollen. Okay, oh, what a terrible picture. This is Prunus, which is plum blossom or cherry blossom. You know, Prunus is the genus that gives us all of our stone fruits, like temperate stone fruit. So cherries, peaches, plums, apricots, nectarines, and the weird ones that are coming out, like what's a pluot or a aprium, right? But then there's also another one that we've mentioned before here. It's the almond. Now, an almond is actually a peach pit. And if you have a really nice high summer peach, open up the woody pit and smell it. It will smell like almond syrup or cyanide or whatever you like, right? You know, in Linwood, there's a place called JD Market, and they actually have fresh almonds there. And it's a little peach that has very little juice, but you can actually tell exactly where they come from. Now, as a person who's worked in nurseries, there's a company called the Stark Seed Company, and they actually market a tree that gives you both peaches and almonds, right? And the peaches are terrible and the almonds are horrible, but at least you get to suffer twice, right? Now, if you actually take a look at this, this plant is very important in Asian culture because it has 5 petals, which stand for the 5 elements, earth, fire, water, wood, and metal, which is very different from the Greco-Roman. But also they bloom on wood that has no leaves early in the year when the snow is still out. So the plum blossom or the cherry blossom, in this case, sakura, is actually a symbol for longing, for endurance, and for concerns for one's loved ones. Now, right around this time, something else happens, and these are actually pear blossoms. Anyone grow pears? Near bees? They don't do anything, right? Now, the thing about this is that my pear trees are the closest things to my beehives, and the bees completely ignore them. So they bloom concurrently with the plum blossoms on the other side, but the plum blossom actually has about 26% sugar in its nectar, where these have about 5%. Like as a bee, where would you know, right? And also, smell them. They smell a little off. They smell a little weird because they're actually pollinated more often by flies. And so they say that if to humans, a flower smells good, it's probably pollinated by a bee or a moth. If it smells bad, it's actually pollinated by a fly. And if it has no smell, it could be pollinated by a bird. So next, please. Okay, I love weeds. Right, you know, and the whole thing is people define a weed as just a plant where you don't want it. So I'm trying to make peace with the weeds because then by definition, they'll no longer be weeds, right? Yeah. If the name weed is in it, like shotweed, like I have trouble getting over that. But so here are 2 very common weeds. And the one in the on the left is Labium purpureum, which is a mid relative. Labiaceae is the mid family. And does anyone have these in their yard? Probably everyone. Yeah. Yeah. Bees love them. They absolutely love them. They're beautiful. They turn gold right before they die. And then, of course, no one knows Taraxacum. You know, I don't believe this is a weed at all because it was actually brought from Europe to this continent. And even though it takes over people's yards, it's not considered to be an invasive. You never see these in the forest, right? And they have a lot of really high quality early in the season pollen and nectar for our bees. And you can see this one right there, right? And then also, my neighborhood has the most wonderful thing. There's a pair of elderly Vietnamese women who come through the entire neighborhood digging all of these up for food and traditional medicine. So I don't need to worry about it at all, right? Yeah, it's so great. Yeah, come get more, right? Okay, next, please. Okay, and so here we have May and June, right? Yeah, and so, yeah. You remember these people, May, Webster, June, Cleaver, right? Yeah, and so here, we're going to be sauntering towards summer, and we actually have Acer macrophyllum. Now, macrophyllum, macro meaning big, phylum meaning leaf, big leaf maple. Now, I have a crush on maples, like for anyone who's seen a previous talk by me, I have a crush on maples that don't look like maples. And I'll have these things with very, very long jagged leaves, and it's a maple, whereas I'll have something that looks like your classic maple leaves, and that's a sweet gum. And so I can talk to you a lot about the taxonomy of maples. But a lot of people say that maples will always produce, no matter what maple, a good amount of nectar. But this is the one you want for honey because the flowers are big. Like the littler maples, like the red maples, the flowers are really small and they occur too early. Has anyone had maple honey? It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, it's really wonderful because if you live in the Pacific Northwest long enough, you will notice that there's one day in spring that the whole region has this really wonderful kind of resin smell to it that's very, very fresh. That's in the honey. Now, the problem is at that time of the year, our populations aren't really quite high enough to do, unless you have really, really, really good spring buildup and a bunch of these trees. Fantastic. Okay, this is Ceanothus. You see Ceanothus? Now, unfortunately, Ceanothus is only marginally hardy here. You know, it gets down to 15 degrees or so. And I had a whole bunch of Ceanothus in front of my, in my parking strip, and I lost every single one last year, right? And they've been there for a decade. And so, you know, they sell them as being good plants for this area, and I support that, but there's always that one time. Next slide, please. Now, so when you actually take a look, the bees love them. Again, bees love blue. Really, really, really great source of pollen here. Okay, now this is actually one of my favorite trees. And I say that about, how many trees have I said that about? This is what's now known as Magnolia neonensis. It used to be called Michelia nymonensis, but it's gone through so many like name changes. Now, the difference is there used to be this family that had magnolias and michelias. The difference is magnolias bloom apically, one flower on the end of each twig, whereas these bloom laterally. And you'll notice that for 2 weeks out of the year, this is what it looks like. And next, this is one of the best smells in the world. And my neighbors, like 4 doors down, say that they can smell it. It's super, super, super powerful. And like, I'm just like, why can't people smell like this, right? But I absolutely love this for 2 weeks out of the year. Incredible. And the rest of the year, it has beautiful evergreen, like leaves, but this is really stunning. Okay, now this is that dish that I said that I had before, and I just filled it with a bunch of marbles and then put water in it, and you'll notice that the bees love it. The bees love it. Great water source. And you have to feed the bees into, like, I don't know, squirrels. Everyone, they love it. Okay, now this is a rose, and I'm not a big rose fan. I mean, I don't like modern roses. You know, I get, okay, first of all, we gotta just say this. I think that the florist industry is really strange. First of all, flowers will cost more than a whole plant, right? And secondly, I think there's something really strange about cutting off something sex organs and giving it away as a gift, like, right? Yeah, but the problem with modern roses is too many petals. There's no way for a like bee to get in there, even if there is pollen or honey. And like, I get a little like embarrassed. It's like, I see these giant roses and I say, ooh, that's a creature with swollen genitals. And it's like, no, but this is Rosa cerevisiae terracantha. And like for like the 3 or 4 roses that I have at my house, they all have a single ring of petals, 5 in all, and exposed centers. Now, next please. Now, this is what this looks like. And I just absolutely love this. It's huge and it's beautiful for two weeks, full of bees. And then you lose the flowers. But next slide. Again, these are the flowers. I'm sorry that I didn't get it. And you can see this with the bees. The next slide. With thorns like that, who needs flowers? This is why this is called the red devil or the red menace, and also a winged thorn. I just absolutely love this, and it keeps people from walking across the yard. Yeah, it's glorious. Next step. Okay, now this is rose adjacent. Now we're kind of in June here, right? And that's rosebud, and this is what was called a rock rose, and it's not a rose. It's called cistus. And if you need something that is reliable and absolutely drought tolerant, plant this. You can get big ones, you can get small ones. And so the one on the right is called Appledorn, and it's what is in my major parking strip. And it's a carefree plant. Now, the one on the left here, it actually has sticky leaves. And traditionally in France, there's a they cultivate this for the perfume industry, and the resin is called labdanum. And it's, if you're into perfumes at all, there's a particular whole classification of perfumes called chypre. And it is a combination of this bergamot and oak moss. And it was by Francois Coty, and it defined an entire genre of perfumery. And so it's nice to have you. Okay, and poppies. Poppies. How many people grow poppies? Yeah, I can tell you some really funny stories about opium poppies, but I won't. Actually, has anyone heard about the Australian crop circles that have been popping up? Because I remember in the 80s, there were crop circles popping up everywhere. But now there's these little crop circles that are popping up in Australia, because that's where opium poppies are grown for the pharmaceutical industry. And they've been finding crop circles. And what's been happening is these kangaroos have been getting into the fields, eating the poppies, getting stoned out of their gourd, and hopping around in circles. right? I want that in my yard. I really do. So this is Papaver somniferum. And most of the things in the poppy family really produce a tremendous amount of very, very high protein pollen. And as you can see, this was called the Danish flag, right? And yeah, you know, Denmark, the flag's a big plus, right? No, sorry. No, but I could actually probably make an entire slideshow of just bees on poppies. So next slide, please. Now, these are just two that, you know, I don't even separate them out, and I just let what happens. And so these are no longer named varieties of them, but you'll notice that on the left here, it's a party. Like, you know, it's you know, look at that diversity, right? And then another party over there on the right. Okay, zoom in on this one. Yeah, this is Nigella. Now, Nigella is also called love in a mist, and it's such a beautiful plant. And you know, you have these beautiful blue things, or anywhere from violet to blue to white in all this lacy foliage. And next one, they actually make these pots. And I think it's really funny that when it's in bloom, it's called love in a mist. When it's in seed, it's called devil in the bush, right? And I'm wondering if that's just the general progress love in a mist turns into. No, but anyway, does anyone know what comes out of these pods? What kind of seeds? Bird seed. Well, actually, people seed, right? Yeah. So the thing about this is there's a Indian spice called kalonji, and it is also called black seed, or some people call it onion seed. And even though it has nothing to do with onion, but if you actually eat Indian or Middle Eastern food and see these little black seeds, that's what this is. And so it's a very, very important spice. And when it's fresher, it actually does have this oniony smell. And in certain places in Asia, certain groups of people don't eat onions or garlic, and this is a nice substitute for it. So I always, you know, take an armload of these and give them to my neighbors who cook with it all the time. Okay, borage. People know borage? Yeah. Do people grow it? Like if you grow it, have you ever not grown it since? Yeah, so borage, Boraginaceae is a name of a whole group of plants, a whole family of plants. And they're characteristic for this, this really blue flower. There's other things in that borage family, like pulmonaria is in that family. And also, you know, comfrey is in this family. But the thing about this is the bees love it, absolutely love it. And they used to call this the herb of courage, and I don't know why. But you can, the leaves actually have these kind of like spiny things, and people say they eat them, but I always tell my friends, yeah, don't make yourself an irritating little salad, right? But the flowers are also beautiful and edible. And in certain places, like in Greece, they actually collect borage honey, blue borage honey. So next, please. Which leads me to this. You need this plant. This is a borage relative, and it's called Tower of Jewels or Echinopinionata. It's a biennial, and it's only partially hardy here. And when you do let it overwinter in its second year, amazing things happen, but it's hard to overwinter. This year they did, though. Next slide. Because they grow at about 12 feet. And when you say Tower of Jewels, you mean Tower of Jewels. You know, I was gonna like dig up a whole bunch and bring them for people tonight, but then this like atmospheric like river came yesterday when I was gonna do it. But these are absolutely huge, absolutely beautiful. But as soon as they bloom, they die, but they leave plenty of seeds. So again, if you grow this, you'll never not grow it. Next, please. And you'll notice that these flowers are just full of bees. And they're just glorious. And then hummingbirds will actually come here too. And so it's just this really nice feeding station for all things pollinating. But they're so impressive. Okay, and this is another plant. So we're you know, almost in summertime. And this is called Ditsia, which is related to a hydrangea. And a lot of times this white one, Ditsia gracilis, is planted in like parking strips or in medians or traffic circles. Really nice plant. Once it is established, you don't need a drop of water ever. But next you have, this is Ditsia the Magician, which has this magenta color. Again, we have a blue wavelength in there. And look what happens. Bees everywhere. Just absolutely, absolutely everywhere. And this is actually easy to propagate. You just take cuttings of it in November, stick them in soil, forget about them, and you have new plants. And that's why my neighbors have to forgive these, right? Yeah, but beautiful, wonderful for a couple of weeks, but then it has these arching canes of beautiful green. Experts. Again, more, and so like we have a whole party here. We have a couple of different bubblers as well as regular honeybees, just beautiful. Okay, wisteria. Now I have this love-hate relationship with wisteria, and notice that I'm putting that, don't plant it because it's an alien. Yeah, you know, in certain places, it gets into the forest and actually will bring down trees. And it's only beautiful for a couple of weeks out of the year, but again, good for bees. You know, and invasive is a really strange thing for me because everything has a place where it belongs. Everything has a place where it is. And if you go to Japan during the wisteria season, it's just breathtaking. Here, I don't recommend it. Okay, now this is, we're right near summertime. And sometimes people will notice that right before we have the major honey flow of the blackberries, some people actually have to feed because we have a little bit of a dearth here. This is honey locust, actually black locust, which makes more honey than honey locust, which is Robinia pseudoacacia. And I have some misgivings about this plant because it usually spreads underground and winds up in the neighbor's yard, right? And my neighbor across the street had a couple that he took down, and the rootstock actually went all the way underneath the pavement and came up in my yard. Right? But when the flowers are new, they're sweet and edible. But again, very, very closely related to wisteria because they're in the pea family and have that particular flower. It's good supplemental for your bees right before the major honey flow. Next, please. And of course, yes.
The hardwood is beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And also it's a great wood for building. It doesn't rot.
Yeah, you know, woodworkers absolutely love it. And one thing that I've noticed about my own process with this is the part of me that really loves ecology and nature is sometimes at odds with the part of me that loves bees. And if I were a woodworker, the same would happen, right? Yeah. Are you a woodworker? Okay, because there's going to be another tree that comes up here that you'll probably like. Have you ever worked with Osage orange? No. It's a Midwestern thing. It has these big, like, they look like a brainer, but the wood is so hard that it will actually dull your chainsaw with one use. And it's bright yellow, beautiful. And I'm trying to get someone to make me stuff out of it. And so no one's ever seen this before, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So again, this has actually gone through many name changes, but rubus is the name of a lot of clustered berries, which of course aren't berries, like, you know, your blackberries, your raspberries, your like whatever berries, they're all rubus. This one used to be called Rubus procerus, but I don't know what they're calling it now. I'm not going to talk about this a lot because most people here know this plant well, right? Even if you don't want to know it well. But one thing I will say for it, you okay? Okay, yes, okay. Is that, you know, it has its critics, but it does make for very good bird habitat. So, you know, there's always the plus and the minus of these things. So let's skip over this and go to the next. Now, this is a plant. Do people grow this? This is sumac, right? Now, this isn't one for bees, but this is one for beekeepers. Now, one thing about this is throughout the Middle East, this is used as a spice. Some people actually call it like purple citrus because those little figs are actually these tiny little fruits and they're very sweet and sour. And if you steep this in cold water, it's a substitute for lemonade. But the nice thing about this is if you have one of these near your house or in your neighborhood, harvest these, I call them inflorescences, but some people call them torches. Dry them out because they make the best smoker fuel in the world. Dense, thick, cool smoke. And about, I guess, 20 years ago, there was an article in Bee Culture magazine saying that the smoke from these actually helps in varroa mite management. And so I'm not sure, well, I still get the mites, but I use this almost exclusively. And I just get an armload of it, lasts a year. Great stuff. Next, please. Okay, now here is another woodworkers thing. Now this is linden, Tilia americana. And if you live in North Seattle, near me or near you, there's a linden grove that goes from 145th, where it was planted as a street tree, all the way down 15th Avenue Northeast, all the way through Roosevelt to 50th Avenue. One solid thing of linden. Never, ever park your car there in the middle of summer, because it's so sticky with honeydew and a lot of nectar is coming. You know, actually, probably shouldn't say this, but I have a habit of licking cars because it's very sweet. But this is actually completely covered with bees. Now, do you get honey from the linden? Yeah, I'm just right out of range of these lindens, but you'll actually notice that in the right, these beautiful flowers. And like people sometimes laugh at me because like there was one time that they were just right up here and I kept jumping so I can smell them. And yeah, and so there's a golf course there, and I just want to put some like beehives right in the greens there. I think it'd be great, right? So this is also called basswood, which you might know as a woodworker. And in the South, this is really well known for its honey. And people say that the honey kind of has a little bit of a blue tinge, which I haven't really seen, but wonderful. Okay, let's talk about herbs. Now, I'm not going to use botanical names for these, but a lot of times people keep aromatic herbs in their yard. And there's 2 to 3 families that aromatic herbs come from. One comes from the mint family, and the other one comes from the what they call APAC, which includes carrots, dill, cumin, all those great things. But these are all in the mint family. First up, we have Russian sage, which is also called Perovskia. And, it has that really sagey smell to it, but it grows really tall and spindly, covered with bees at all times. The next one is thyme, right? And like, it's so interesting how such a small flower can pack so much nectar in there. And friends of mine from Greece actually brought me this thyme honey, and it's just so copious there. It's wonderful. Next up, we have lavender, of course. And, I have a friend who keeps bees on Vashon, and he has access to lavender. I want to like it, but I just don't. It reminds me of cleanser. And of course, the word lavender comes from lavare, which means to wash. And I love the smell of it, but not in my food. But that's just me. That's just me. Okay, next up, we have antisop, which is agastache, and this one smells like licorice. And then finally, my favorite herb, which is winter savory. And then of course, it blooms in the summer. There's 2 savories out there: summer savory, which is an annual, and winter savory, which is a perennial, and it grows and grows and grows and grows. And I like to use it on anything. Yeah. But next, please. Okay, now this is something weird. This is called linaria, and it might look like the herbs that we just saw, but it's actually in the snapdragon family. And if you get really close, there's actually tiny snapdragon family. I have no idea how this thing produces as much sugar as it does, because I will see bumblebees land on it. Because it's a tiny thing. It's an absolutely tiny thing. And also hummingbirds will forage this, and of course the bees. Now this is a perennial version that just popped up in my yard, and it just happens everywhere around here. And then we actually have a seed variety called the fairy bouquet, which is on the right there. And it's just really nice. I planted like between vegetables just to give, something to attract bees as well as a little bit of color. Wonderful. Okay, now we have hebes. Now, hebes are another thing that's just kind of marginally hard to hear. They come from New Zealand, but this one is the one that I can keep alive over time. And as you can see, we have both the, honeybee and a native bee here happening. And this is cardoons. This is not an artichoke. Gardeners, we're such optimists, right? I read a quote that said, like, gardeners are the ultimate optimists, otherwise there'd be no such thing as the North Dakota Palm Society. Yeah, but you know, people around here, we try to grow artichokes, and you know, we put so much time and effort, and we get two, right? Well, but fine. This is a cardoon though. They grow to 12 feet. Huge thing. You don't really eat the flowers like you do with the artichokes, but you actually eat the stalks from it, the leaf stalks. It's very labor intensive. You have to cut them, defoliate them, blanch them, peel them, and then roast them, and they're really good, right? But as you can see, it has this thistle-like flower, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bees in it, right? And they're so interesting because you'll see these bees flying around. They'll go inside, bury themselves so you can't see them, and they'll back out, and they're so fat and happy that they just need the air. Okay, I've got to admit this. I've got a huge crush on dahlias, right? And I actually try to take the seeds from my favorite dahlia every year and plant them and see what I get. And I actually get dahlias sooner from seed than I do from the tubers. And again, like, you know, my roses, always with the open center. And you can see that these are just some seedlings from last year. And you can see that everyone loves them. And take a look, everyone loves them. You know, that one in the middle, I absolutely love, and so do the bees. And, but, you know, late summer. Okay, this is weird. So I was up near Northgate, and I was in one of these parking strip malls, blah, blah, blah. And then there was this boxwood there. And I've never really grown boxwood because, I don't know, it's just kind of nondescript for me, and I don't like topiary or hedges or things like that. But this thing was just buzzing. And if you take a look at the right side, you'll actually notice that there's bees all over it. And so I need to do more study into boxwoods and, you know, what they offer. There's a little bit of a fungal disease that's attacking boxwoods now, so some people are kind of afraid of it. But I'm just wondering, if we had entire hedges of boxwood, would we have a honey surplus from it? Okay, no one knows what this is, right? Okay, yeah. So this is fireweed, and you know, it used to be called Lobium againstifolio, but now it's changed its name several times. Now, I actually picked one little thing about this big from a parking lot, and I put it in my yard, and that's what I have now, right? And I can honestly say that it's increased my honey yield by maybe 20%. They love it. They absolutely love it. And you know, a lot of does anyone take their beehives to the mountains for the? Yeah. Is the honey really super clear and nice? Yeah. You know, I was in a grocery store once, and I don't know this company very well, but it's called Annie's, and they have varietal honeys. And the one that they said was the fireweed honey was really dark. I know this can't be it, because it's almost water clear. It's really, but I think what happens is natively this grows really closely to something called Pearly Everlasting, which actually has a dark honey. But again, beautiful. Some people call it invasive. I can't call it invasive because it's a native. It wants to be here. And you know, I'm constantly like taking it out and not noticing any difference. Next, please. Okay, so again, here we have something not so great. What's this? This is Japanese knotweed. It used to be called Polygonum cuspidatum, but it's changed its name so many times. Polygonum to Tovara to Persicaria. And you know, when I see it like this, I can kind of forgive it for being such an evil thing because it's beautiful. I understand why people import it. In Japan, it's beautiful. It doesn't take over, but you can see the flowers over there. But you know, I understand that if this grows in your yard, it means that you were a terrible person in a previous life. But it makes beautiful honey that's garnet. It is so dark red, it's almost black. I used to get a second harvest of this. My primary harvest is, of course, the blackberry and related things. And then my second harvest, which actually was October 1st, was from this. And it's a smaller harvest. Beautiful, wonderful. I can't get it anymore because there's so much development in the area that they're taking it out. Again, my love of plants as an ecologically minded person is very different from my love of plants as a beekeeper. So, okay, now this is Caryopteris. Some people call it bluebeard, and it starts blooming September or so. It's a little soap shrub. It's really wonderful. Bees absolutely love it. I don't know if you have, there's ever enough bees at this time of year to get a surplus. Maybe, but I'm willing to try. Next step, please. Okay, and asters. Now this is later in the season, and asters create a honey that is dark, and it's kind of prone to getting really granular, right? And so I don't know if here we can ever get a surplus of it. But next slide, please. I went to school in Ohio, right? And there is something about the Ohio prairie asters that it's just amazing. There's not a lot that I really loved about Ohio, but I mean, it was a good place to get an education, right? But in the fall, as you went out, there's actually oceans and oceans and oceans of these. And so the Ohio State University, they actually had an apiary sciences department there, and they actually would collect this too. That's nice. Okay, now this is an interesting one, and I see this in yards. This is Oxydendron arboreum, which is also called sourwood. And if you take a look at the flowers, does anyone know what it might be related to? By looking at the flowers? It's actually related to blueberries, right? It's actually related to salal. It's related to, all of those really, really wonderful things that are in the ericaceous family, right? And it's called sourwood because the leaves are actually quite sour. And if you pick them when they're still young and tender, put them in a salad. It's really wonderful. Bees will absolutely go toward this in the fall. But the real reason to plant this is, next slide, that, right? Glorious fall color. More and more, I'm planting for like fall interest. And I don't have them here in this slide presentation. I think that everyone in the world that has a space should plant blueberries for their fall color. Just beautiful. Again, same family. Next, please. This is colchicum, which is also called autumn crocus. And these come out, September, October, and I always get sad, right? I get a little sad because when I see this, I know that winter's coming, right? But these are such a strange and wonderful flower because in fall, you get the flowers without leaves. And some people call these naked girls because of that. Then in the spring, you get the foliage without the flower. And this is kind of my signal that things are ending. This is saffron crocus, right? And saffron is such a wonderful plant. It's actually a fall blooming crocus. So we're starting the year and ending the year with a crocus. And people say that saffron is the most expensive thing on earth by weight. Each one of these only gives you 3 stigmas. They weigh less than nothing. And each flower blooms on a different day. So they actually have to be harvested by hand. But these things I can keep next to my nose all day and be really happy about it. So at this time, we're just considering this to be a little bit of dessert for our bees, nothing that is going to give us a surplus or anything, but still nice to have around. Please. Sedums. Sedums. Now this is a sedum, and it's a taller sedum, and it's called autumn joy. And these are really, really, really like available in nurseries. But the secret is no one ever needs to purchase a sedum. If one of the leaves just kind of falls into your shopping cart, just stick in the ground, you're going to see them next year, right? It's one of the most easy plants to propagate. And again, the bees just absolutely love them. And I keep thinking, I should turn my roof into a green roof. And I mean, I would have to do a lot of reinforcement to bear all that weight. But sedums never, ever need to be watered, right? And they're a very, very common plant for green roofs and a nice picnic place for your bees. And of course, ivy. Now, ivy is a weird and strange and misunderstood plant. And again, it's an alien, don't plant it, right? Please don't ever plant this. But what happens is the ivy grows around the ground and then it finds a place to go upward. And then it actually has what we call a foliar dimorphism, a second shaped leaf that looks completely different from the first. And in the fall, you get these clusters of flowers that bees love. Has anyone ever had ivy honey?
My daughter's favorite. She picks it out of the comb with her fingers and eats it like two pieces of candy.
Really?
Yeah, it crystallizes.
It crystallizes
Before
almost
it gets-
immediately.
yeah.
Does it? Like, she likes it? Yeah. If you ever, I'm with you here. I'm with you here. Yeah. Some people have weird kids. No, but if you actually crush a leaf of an ivy and smell it, it has that off smell, that's in the honey. No, but one thing, as you're saying, is it crystallizes almost immediately. And like, once it's there, you can't spit it out or anything like that. But I think it's very handy because it gives your bees a lot of winter stores, right? And it's there. It happens to be abundant, right? It's so funny. There's that English Christmas carol, the holly and the ivy, like why praise either one of those plants? It's just like two of my least favorite things in the Pacific Northwest. Super invasive, right? And I don't know how to get rid of it. Luckily, my ivy in my yard is, this is taken in Edmonds, but the ivy in my yard is very minimal, so I can keep on top of it. But it's really kind of, from a biological standpoint, a very interesting plant. And we're at the end of the year. Okay. Now, how are we doing on time here? About 8:30. Is that my cue to leave?
I think we can take maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah,
Questions?
I'm
Anyone's got
again, like,
questions?
I talk too much, I talk way too much. So like, if anyone, has any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Margalie, can you keep an eye on the online people and let us know if anyone, or is Margalie online actually? I don't remember if she was actually online. Jeff, can you keep an eye online and let us know if there's anyone online?
Sure, I'll try to do that.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, please.
One thing I didn't mention is like really popular with the honeybees in my yard. It's the rosemary.
Rosemary, of course, yeah. You know, I should have put it in with the herbs. Yeah.
It's pretty, becoming more hardy because of climate change.
Yes.
And it survived most of the temperatures of last year.
Yeah, so you know, with rosemary, it's a wonderful, I love like pruning the rosemary and taking the branches of rosemary and putting them right on top of the coals for a barbecue. It's just like, your life doesn't get any better, you might as well go die, it's wonderful. But rosemary, it's actually pretty hardy, but the thing that it doesn't like is winter wet.
Right.
And so as long as it has really good drainage, that's great. I love rosemary so much.
Rosemary branches make great smoker fuel.
Oh, smoker fuel, good, very good, thank you so much. I did mention lavender in that one, it's only one thing in that slide with the herbs. And yeah, someday I'll go to Grasse in France because there's so much like botanical wealth there. I would love to go there. Any other questions?
You mentioned only one variety of Julia. Linden tree.
Yes.
But it looks like there's several. I could tell that some of them produce the honeydew. But I think they bloom at different times.
Yeah, slightly different times. The one that is planted near 15th Avenue Northeast, that's Tilia americana. There's also a smaller one called Tilia amurensis. And there's even a Tilia that only grows to like this, and I tried it. Yeah, but they each have a slightly different size flower, and some of them are attractive to bumblebees, whereas some of them are more attractive to honeybees and other things. But it's a common street tree. Yeah, and it's not great to park your car under. There's another tree that is called Liriodendron, which is called the tulip poplar, has yellow cup-shaped flowers. Amazing. And amazingly full of bees. But don't park your car. Yeah, North Seattle Community College has a park near there that's just filled with theory. You mentioned everybody should plant blueberries. Well, I've got a bunch of blueberries and I'll go down there, they're in full bloom and I'm hard pressed to find one bee, a honeybee. Well, no, a lot of bumblebees, right? Bumblebees all over there. Yeah, well, honeybees are kind of clever because a lot of times the flower is a little bit too big for the tongue of the bee, but they'll sometimes crawl around to the other side and bite a hole in it. I've heard that. Yeah. I just don't see bees on. I think it's also the maples that are in bloom kind of at the same time. Yeah, they like going to the cache, right? And also our local madrona trees, the arbutus, they do the same thing. They go around to the other side. I have one that a lot of people call the strawberry tree, which is called Arbutus unidocompacta. And it's closely related to the madronas here. But I think it's really funny history because it creates these things that almost like strawberries and you just kind of want to eat it. But unido, the species name means eat only one. You can eat them, but they taste really stupid. Right? They taste like insipid peaches. And if there's nothing else around and I'm starving, sure, why not? But the bees actually I see them doing that. Those skeletons. Yes, please.
Is there a table that's normally shorter? Because I know they get to be big.
Well, they're big and lanky, but there's a yellow variety and it's called Arnold's Promise. And it's kind of V-shaped. There's several different stories about why they're called witch eagles, and I don't know why, but they have this kind of V-shaped branching thing. And evidently people used to water witch with them because of that shape. But Arnold's Promise has that kind of V-shaped habit. It only gets about this big, but bright yellow. I'm going right now. How's it smell? Well, it has to be a hot day. That one, it has to be like in my yard, 55 degrees. And there was one year that we had just a beautiful, bright spring. And they were just buzzing with them. But tomorrow? Okay, good. Really?
What?
Yeah. I'll be looking.
Yeah. Wow.
The bees like St. John wort? Not really. No. It's such a complex flower. And the little spindly, like mid-June, the little spindly St. John worts that's on all the parking strips and everything like that. That's actually the medicinal St. John's wort. And it's fascinating because the botanical name is Hypericum perforatum. Perforatum meaning perforated little holes. So if you pick one of those up, look at the light through it, you'll see that there's tiny little holes throughout the leaves. And it's just, of course, that has nothing to do with your question, but yeah.
Have you ever grown meadow foam?
Meadow foam, like a Philiptrum? Yes, I have, but I don't really. Or am
I don't remember that. I don't think that's the right scientific. It's a little ground cover. Other name for it is poached egg flower. It's near native from Northern California, Oregon, and Vancouver Island.
Oh. See, I don't know that one.
It is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's like a March, April bloom, if I remember correctly. It's actually a specialty honey crop down in Oregon, and it grows amazingly well up here.
Okay.
So as just a small early blooming ground cover, it is stunning.
I will look that up because I'm thinking of Philiptrum, which is meadow rue, which is it's ranunculation, which I have. But
you should look it up.
I should look that up. It used to be that I went to nurseries and looked for plants that I liked. Now I go to nurseries and buy the plants that have the bees on them. You have to have your criteria.
Online question. This has come up a few times, but the horse chestnut or the buckeye tree, I've heard that pollen is potentially toxic it's definitely toxic to people, but potentially bees as well. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I did go to the Ohio State University and that's our mascot. The Buckeye, yes, yes. You know, it's so funny because I've never attended a football game in my life. But anyway, I do not know about that. You know, around here, there are some Buckeye trees or horse chestnuts. They're beautiful trees. I don't know anything about the toxicity of the pollen, but I do know that the nuts are actually toxic.
Jeff, Randy Oliver told me that they are toxic to bees. I can't speak for anything else, but he did tell me that once.
I've heard him say, I've heard him sort of teeter back and forth that, you know, whether or not the nectar really is, because the bees work it. You know, is it really toxic to the bees? We know it's toxic to us, but he's never given me a fully, Randy's never given me a fully definitive answer. And since we have a plant expert, I thought I would ask.
We've experienced beekeeping in California. The botanical name is Aesculus californica, and it's native to a lot of the coast. And beekeepers do believe that it's extremely toxic to bees. They feel like they gotta stop flying on the back, and they just like do like buzz guard around the frame.
Wow.
And just the bees disappear from the hive. The theory is that the nectar is super toxic. For whatever reason, they haven't figured out why bees don't stop foraging for it, but they still go for it. Since it's native, most of the beekeepers I know go in the hills early season and late during the summer as well, while they actually try to get away from there, because in agricultural land, they cut all the trees, and so there's none of the buckeye around there. The people that live there, the problem is that we actually see the problem in late August or September, when they seem to feed the larvae with the toxic pollen and nectar, and then just decimate the hive. And wow. And so in a year of a drought, I first was in California in 2014, 2016. Years of drought, it's a big problem because it blew in June and nothing else is blooming. If it's a year where it's actually very wet, there's a bunch of other flowers blooming in July with that tree. It's a bit later, and it actually doesn't cause as many problems. But all of this, I spent a lot of time in Davis, the library, the UC Davis library. They don't mention a lot about it. That was over 10 years ago. There's not a lot of studies or anything, but beekeepers truly believe it's super toxic.
Interesting. You know, this is, well, first of all, one of my comments based on that is, I eat a lot of things that are bad for me. right. Yeah, no, but there's also things, but there's something that occurs in rhododendrons, which is called gray anatoxin. And, but one thing that's really nice is it's not harmful to bees, but our rhododendrons around here aren't usually foraged by like honeybees. They're foraged more by bumblebees. But there is a plant called mountain laurel, which is also called kalmia, which has the gray anatoxin in it as well. And that is, there's a lot of them in the Adirondack Mountains, and the beekeepers there will actually let their bees forage on them early to build up their brood. But before they super for their own collection, they will actually bilge all of that honey because of the gray anatoxin. But that's also the same toxin that's in the rhododendrons in Nepal that the Apis dorsata actually forages. And they say it's hallucinogenic. So I
think we have time for one more question.
One more question. Yeah, thank you so much.
What the Artemisia family is similar to the
Okay, so Artemisias, they're actually very, very closely related to a lot of your daisies and things. And so there's one that's called Artemisia dracunculus, and that's called the dragon herb, which is tarragon, right? And so that's fine for humans. I don't notice it being very floriferous. And then I have one in my yard, which is another Artemisia that is really important in traditional Chinese medicine and Korean cooking, which is called mugwort. And like we want to talk about the pharmacology of that. It's amazing, right? I didn't notice many flowers though.
Yeah, I grow both mugwort and wormwood.
Wormwood, yes.
Bees.
Yeah.
The blue type, but I have no idea what that's. I know mugwort or wormwood. It's usually
Absinthe. Yeah. Absinthe.
Absinthe.
Maybe, yeah. And I don't know what concentrations you need to have it. You know, they'll say that like the poison's in the dose.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, you know, anything that's potentially good for you can also be, you know, there's that stuff. Dihydrogen monoxide, you know, water, right? It's fatal if inhaled. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for everyone online for joining us and everyone in person, of course, for joining us as well. Have a wonderful evening. Looking forward to seeing you in 1 month. Our presenter next month is going to be David Feinberg, and he is going to be presenting on double queening. He's been doing this for a long time. His mentor is a commercial beekeeper who double queens for honey production every single year. It should be a really, really good presentation. Hope to see you there. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.